that's a huge transition. That's not something lightly there to go from a compound to a traditional archery. So like this year, you locking that thing up and you're strictly trad, or do you think you'll still have it within reach?
No, so I took the biggest step, I think, and I don't own anything but trad bows now. I sold my
Whoa.
compound. Yeah, I went the full nine. I had a PSE for a couple of years. I got rid of it, bought a brand new prime, and was shooting a prime for like 3 months. And I was like, nah, I can't do it. So I sold the prime too. I was just like, I got to take that step.
Lights,
camera,
follow the trail.
ready to shoot.
If you know where a deer's bedding and you know where he's eating, that deer should be dead.
Camera.
If you're passive on a deer, what you're doing is you're teaching them.
I've got $30 in the Michigan record book. Everyone but one has had at least one previous wound on his body. Some had as many as 4.
The Exodus Podcast,
Your source for all things whitetail.
Chris, welcome to the Exodus Podcast. How's it going today?
It's going good, man. Going
Good.
good. Glad to be here.
Yeah, happy to have you. I know we talked to the Harrisburg show this past February, and you've been on a tear here recently, it seems like, and we'll talk about all of that. But before we get into all of that, go ahead and introduce yourself, who you are, what you do for a living.
Yeah, so my name is Chris Weist. I'm from West Central Pennsylvania, and I am a welder by trade. I've been pretty much in production the fair share of my life. So,
union welder or work for a company or what exactly?
yeah, it's a Volvo construction equipment, and so it's just production work, production welding.
Very cool. And okay, so some welding, and then what kind of work schedule do you have? Because it's a good question, because I think a lot of people have different types of work schedules. Some people are weekend warriors, and then you're on second shift. So I think there's pros and cons to all sorts of work schedules. So what's yours?
Yeah, definitely. No, I agree. So yeah, this job is second shift. It's an early second, so I go in at like 1 o'clock and get off at 9:30, which isn't bad at all, in my opinion. Get to bed early enough, you can get up early in the morning. But I've definitely worked off shifts basically my entire life, like third shifts and stuff, and I'll get off in the morning and hunt, then hunt the evenings or whatever I have to do basically to get in the woods. So
yeah, what do you like second shift more than third shift, or would and this is a more deer hunting centric question, like if you could pick your shift with the fall or even throughout the whole year so you could scout more, but like what would be the perfect shift schedule for you, or do you think you're in it right now?
I like second shift. I can get into the morning hunts. I did that a lot when I was a little bit younger, but third shift really gave me a lot of options. I could either get off in the morning, go straight to the woods and hunt, or I could go right to bed later in the morning, get up and hunt the evening. So I kind of could choose morning or evening each day.
Yeah.
Second shift, you're kind of like prone towards that every morning hunt. But it doesn't really matter to me. When it comes down to it, I just adjust accordingly and scout accordingly. If I know what shift I'm going to be working coming through the fall, I shift towards, what sits I'm going to have. So,
yeah, that's really interesting. I think, pros and cons to all of those. So, welder for a living. Tell us a little bit about yourself beyond that. From explain a little bit of your hunting style, where you are hunting, where you have been hunting here in the past, and so people can get an understand what kind of terrain you're hunting.
Yeah, so and I was actually listening to a podcast about this. I think it was with Bill Martonic was in. He was kind of explaining the difference between, or I guess, people's perspective on big woods and hill country, and like what the differences are.
It is
subjective.
But
I think it's I think it's a mix. So like here in Pennsylvania, it's a lot of big mountain stuff, and then like when I go to Ohio's a lot of hill country. And then even in Maryland where I go, it's big mountain stuff, just like Pennsylvania. It's not real far, so it's basically the same terrain. And I've been to North Carolina. It's a lot of just smaller rolling hills and flat land. And as far as hunting style, I can't really say that I'm like a one trick pony with anything. I kind of adjust to whatever I need to adjust to. Um, but if you're talking like equipment wise, I've been into the saddle game for a couple of years. I really like that. It has its pros and cons, just like everything else. But um, and then recently, I told you that I'm switching to traditional stuff now.
Yeah.
Getting into that. So
Yeah, so that's a huge transition. That's not something lightly there to go from a compound to a traditional archery. What inspired you to do that? Because that takes a lot of practice.
oh, definitely. So my girl was peeking, making sure she wasn't in the way.
Okay.
No, so I think what it is I've been shooting for about 6 years now, traditional bow, and the first couple of years was just playing around, and then I would take it out like an early season and just make it a priority or a goal to shoot like a doe or something early season when not a lot was going on for me at that point.
Mhm.
But now I've just killed enough deer with a compound. It's not boring. I will not. It's not boring. I love every second of it, but I think I get kind of bored a little bit. Like I just always looking for that next challenge, you know.
Uh-huh.
And this past season, I actually kind of took a step back on myself. I was supposed to have hunted with my own in my recurve in Pennsylvania, and I started a year out like that, and then I had a buck walk. I was hunting this nice 10. I did end up killing him, but my point was the first day of the season, I had this buck come in, have a recurve, small buck leading, small buck went underneath the stand, hit my boot trail, lost his mind. So the big one wouldn't commit. He's standing at like 27 yards. So I
Oh,
just kind of had to watch him. Yeah. So now I'm thinking to myself, man, I should probably just take my compound in there and get this thing done. So the next Friday I go in, buck walks in 12 yards. I killed him my compound. And I'm kicking myself because I
you
take my
could've-
recurve.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you could have done that. So, all right. So it was kind of like, it was still in your repertoire. Like you still wanted to switch back to the compound. So like this year, you locking that thing up and you're strictly trad, or do you think you'll still have it within reach?
No, so I took the biggest step, I think, and I don't own anything but trad bows now. I sold my
Whoa.
compound. Yeah, yeah, I went the full nine. I even I had a PSE for a couple of years. I got rid of it, bought a brand new prime, and was shooting a prime for like 3 months, and I was like, nah, I can't do it. So I sold the prime too. I was just like, I got to take that step.
Oh my gosh. So yeah, that's taking the full plunge in that. And is I guess what I'm trying to ask, or what I'm thinking through here now, is like that experience where he was 27 yards away and you didn't shoot him. And so like you were thinking, okay, if I had my compound bow, I'd kill him. And then you ended up shooting him and it all worked out later on. But is shooting one with a traditional bow, that gap between not killing him at 27 yards and potentially killing him, let's say at 15 yards with a trad bow, like, is that gap worth it in your mind? I'm guessing the answer is yes, if that makes sense. It's kind of obscure. It is, by not shooting him at 27, that sucks. But if you had the opportunity to shoot him at 15 yards and you did kill him with the traditional equipment, like, is it that much better than shooting him at 27 with a compound bow?
Absolutely. So I've killed 5 with my recurve over the last couple of years, just does, and it's just a different feeling, you know. And I really feel like the main goal is it just makes you 10 times the better woodsman. You know, you have to, and I know I've heard Dalton Lewis say this from the Stick Boys. You have to be where that deer or that buck is going to put his foot. Like you have to be within that window. It's not just sitting on an oak flat, say, well, that deer is feeding on this white oak at 35, so I'm just going to sit here and shoot him with my compound or my crossbow. It's now you're looking at little pinches, little tiny terrain features, any little minuscule detail to get you closer to that tree to get you in range.
Yeah, for sure. I think absolutely. I feel like you have to have so much more precision with your setup, because you have to be so close and it has to be so refined. Where, I mean, the compound is still in the grand scheme of all forms of weapons for whitetails, it's still pretty precise. But I mean, traditional archery equipment doesn't get any more precise than that. So how hard was it to transition from going from compound to traditional archery? I mean, what did that process look like? Were you trying to shoot every day, watching a lot of YouTube videos? Did you have someone in your corner to help you? What did that look like?
Yeah, so there's actually a guy that did my compound work. He owns his own little shop in his basement, and he was actually a champion shooter. I don't know what title he had, whatever, blah blah blah. But he was a really good shooter and won some tournaments for Hoyt with a recurve. So I kind of had him to like go to if I needed. And then as far as the transition, I really feel like it takes about 5 years to be
Wow.
a good shot with a recurve. Now, some guys are just naturally good at that stuff, and it's probably a lot less than that. But for me to like confidently hunt and hunt big deer, I think for me it was like 5 years. And now, once you have it down, it's kind of like riding a bicycle,
Are you instinctive shooting, or how do you shoot?
So I've done both, but I mean, there's all kinds of different styles. But right now, I shoot 3 fingers under, and I shoot a fixed crawl. So fixed crawl is I just have a brass knock set so far underneath my knocking point, and you put my fingers underneath the knocking point, and you aim the point of your arrow. So I have that knocking point set for 25, and then I gap shoot anything under 25 yards.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So it's really, they say it's 10,000 hours to master a skill, and traditional archery is certainly 10,000 hours. Yeah. I think sometimes with as much information that's out there, I think sometimes you may maybe be able to drop that at least 1,000 hours, but I'm guessing with traditional archery, it's not, because so much of it, I feel so much of it is, I have a recurve and I have not killed anything with it, but I shoot it every now and then for fun. And I feel it's form, and it's almost just as much mental. Like with a compound bow, obviously there's still people that have target panic and everything else, but you still have all these check systems, and you're squeezing the release or whatever. With traditional archery, you're just pulling something back, and it's like throwing a baseball. It's it's like you just look at it.
The biggest thing for me is you're keeping your holding arm locked, and then the release. You're pulling until you got that smooth transition through your release.
Uh-huh.
And a lot of times for me, if I'm being lazy while I'm shooting, then I let my fingers get caught. My fingers get lazy, and then you start getting it holds up just like if your release would catch. You got that split second, that split hold, and then you're off left and right. So
yeah, interesting. So okay, so you sold all your compound equipment. You're rocking the trad. You're wearing a saddle. How was that transition as well? Because I mean, you made I think you like change. It's kind of what it feels like, How has that been? I know there's a lot of saddle content out there, but I just kind of want your quick consensus on how that has been for you and why you like it.
Yeah, so I mean, everything has its ups and downs. Like I said, with the saddle thing, the only thing that I don't like about the saddle so far is I'm having a hard time getting shots on my weak side, like finding a comfortable way to get the shots off on my weak side. Actually had to happen last year. I had a buck run through like 28 yards chasing a doe on my weak side, and I was having a hell of a time trying to get turned around.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, it's light and it's easy, it's super mobile, so that's a big thing for me. But other than that, like if I plan to sit a long period of time, like if it's November and I'm going to sit all day, then more than likely you'll probably see me with a hang on.
Sure.
And I think it's just a lot more convenient and a lot more opportunity.
Yeah, I did. Last year I did one dark to dark in a saddle. I felt like an old man when I got down out of the tree.
I've done it.
I know I did not have all like it set up 100% optimized and perfected. So part of that's on me for sure. But okay. So this looking through here, I mean, this upcoming year, obviously, I'm officially excited. I'm always excited for deer season, but I just checked my cell cameras this morning. There's a buck with big bases, and it's Exodus. We just launched our 8-year anniversary sale. Like it feels like we're in it right now. So For this upcoming season, I want to hear what postseason scouting you did and kind of what is on the docket for this year.
Yeah. So I've probably spent more time postseason scouting this year than I might have ever have. Um, one, because I needed to get in the woods more postseason, and it's hard for me just to stay out of the woods. Is the second one. um, but yeah, so I got a couple bucks on the radar that I know made it, and actually, I got laying right here on my coffee table. I got this guy.
Oh, nice. For
It
anyone
was
listening, solid buck.
yeah, that
Got a
was
sticker on the G2.
yep. And he was 62 and 4/8 is what that one was. That was my biggest shed this year.
Wow.
And I actually had that buck on camera in February, so I know he made it through. And I have a really good feeling. I've actually been getting pictures of that deer. It's really big mountain ground, and there's not a lot of really big deer in PA. I won't say that. I take that back. There's not a lot of big deer in this chunk where I'm focusing at, and I got a buck that's got some pretty big bases on that same exact cell camera coming in checking that same scrape. So I have a notion that it's him.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I've been scouting for that deer really hard specifically, and I got a really solid game plan for him. A lot of food sources I found, oaks, and checking out the clear cuts, seeing what for browse they have, finding all the scrape lines, putting all the dots together, A, B, and C. And Ohio, I did some postseason scouting, but I kind of have that area kind of fine tuned. I spent a lot of time in there last year, including 22 days in a tree. So,
Wow.
and then I ran probably around 20 cameras in Ohio, and I think I just have enough that I'm comfortable with saying that I'm kind of got the leg up for this upcoming season. And
So what specifically makes you feel that? Obviously, 20 some days in the stand and a lot of cameras and boots on the ground. But what do you know this year that you didn't know last year?
I actually kept track of a lot of dates of certain events. Like I seen a couple of does that were getting pushed really, really hard in one specific spot, right around that 9th, 10th, 11th. So I made note of that when those does are coming in heat, and I'm actually trying to butt that information up. I'm waiting to get feedback on some of the trail cameras I have out to see when these spawns are dropping, and then I'm going to count that back to 201 days and see if that lines up with that information, all that little stuff. And then in my postseason scouting, I really found where I think so. There's a big point that comes out off this main ridge, and I know that the specific deer that I was after, we named him Hoss. He was probably 150 inches last year, and I know he made it through. I got pictures of him in late December, and a neighbor has pictures of him in January. So really, my main focus is on that deer, but obviously it doesn't have to be that deer. That's kind of how I roll. Like I'll pick a certain buck to hunt, but it doesn't have to be him if it comes to that point in the season. But I think I really understand how that deer is using that ridge system now after running a handful of cameras on it. So I have trees picked out. I spent a lot of time in there. They're milkweed, understanding exactly what's going on, how he uses it, why he's using it, and when he likes to be there. I got a notepad with every single date of pictures I had of him, what direction he's coming from, where the wind was the wind to his back, was it to his nose, all that stuff. I got it all laid out on a data sheet. So it's a lot more confident than, I didn't have any of that stuff last year, and that ridge was new to me,
Yeah, you've done the work there. I'll be really excited to see how it pans out. Now, here's just kind of a fun question. If you could pick between where you hunt in Pennsylvania and Ohio, let's say you walk out your front door, it could be where you hunt in Ohio, or you could walk out your front door and it's where you're hunting in Pennsylvania. Which one are you taking?
Ohio.
No hesitation.
I absolutely love that place down there. It's just like my getaway. I just have a small little cabin down there. I could live there. Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. That's pretty cool. And okay, so you were mentioning some of these dates and everything else. And I know we talked previously about vine scrapes and What have you? Because that's something that a lot of people understand now. But I'd be curious if you have any spins on it or any key findings that you found with using vine scrapes in the big woods to locate bucks.
Yeah. So my information is more on just the actual vine itself. I can't say that I have used them to specifically target deer, but rather if I find a really good scrape that bucks are using, you can spice it up, or you
Mm.
can make it just a little bit better, you know.
Hmm.
And as far as the vine goes, I have some notes written down here. That stuff that's really helped me to pass that I found out around the size of your thumb, around a quarter, is about the size of vine that I like to use.
Hmm.
And you have to watch with those size vines because sometimes they'll be dead. If you can break the vine, and 9 chances out of 10 that the deer will use it, but it won't be as good as if it was fully alive. If you can cut it and it's like sap runs out of it and the juice runs out of it, those are the good ones.
Hmm.
All right, about the size of your thumb. Make sure they're alive. And a lot of times, like this last year, I've been hanging double sets. So I'll hang two vines down beside each other, and it really just seems like that the deer like to get their head up in there, and they just, just like they do a regular licking branch. They like to get up there and just have more than one to
Sure.
mess with.
Sure. That's interesting. Yeah. And so, yeah, I'm, that's the first time I heard someone add in two to one. What
Mhm.
inspired you to do that? Just curiosity?
Uh, yeah, to be honest, it was kind of a curiosity thing, and then once I seen it was working, then I transitioned that more into more of my sets. And I sent you that picture yesterday of that buck
Yeah.
had his head up in those two vines, and same thing this morning. This morning at 7 o'clock, there was
Yeah.
another buck in there doing the same thing.
Isn't that crazy? I think that it's such a powerful inventory tool. I don't know if there's a more
Oh my
powerful
gosh,
inventory tool.
there isn't. I don't think there is.
Even for states that can bait. I've never been in a situation where you can bait, but I would still probably take a good mock scrape over a bait pile, personally.
Absolutely, yeah, yep.
Yeah. So, okay, so did have you found on public when you're making some of these vine scrapes, do you see anyone try to like key in on those specific scrapes too? Or are they pretty remote, or what's been your experience? Because I'm just thinking someone's walking through the woods and they're like, "What's that?" And then like they see two
Yeah.
mocks, or they see two vines on a scrape and a camera. What's been your experience with that?
I mean, I really haven't had any issues with anybody messing with my stuff just yet. Well, as far as the scrapes, I've had people mess with cameras. You know how that is.
Sure.
Yeah, I've had people steal the cards out of my SD cameras and all that stuff. But fortunately, I've met a fair amount of the locals in the area that I'm at in Ohio, so they kind of like at least know
Uh huh.
who is where. You know what I mean? So
Sure.
I feel like it's a lot less likely for someone just to walk in and steal your stuff, especially when they know who you are and who's
Take a
doing it.
take a real a real son of a gun to do that. Just so they know.
Yeah, yeah. But I haven't really had anybody like set right up on it in my stuff. I mean, people come close, but it's public ground too, so can't really be mad.
Sure. Yeah.
You just gotta adjust accordingly.
Yeah. And
Yeah,
there's a lot of room
a
down there
lot of
too.
times I'll find. Oh yeah, yeah. There's thousands of acres. A lot of times, if I see somebody set up, I'll actually kind of like sit and just look at it and be like, why is this guy here? What
Sure.
does he know that I don't know, or is it just completely irrelevant to anything and he's just sitting here? Like, you want to know why.
Yeah. I think that's the most powerful word in the whitetail woods. Why? No matter what it is,
Yep.
asking yourself why is really impactful. And I think even going and looking at really old stands too, well, the ones that are falling apart. I
The
think
wooden
it's
ones. Yep.
yeah, it's still fun to go look at that one and be like, why? And a lot of times it's in a bottom, and I don't know how they like it's probably a firearm stand, but it's still fun just to come across those things and ask, okay, well, why
A lot of
why did
times
you
those are good
do
spots too.
that?
Yeah. Every once in a while, I'll run into an old wooden stand that's falling down. And it's like, not gonna lie, like this is pretty good.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, think of how much more effort it went in to put that stand up. Now we can
Oh
just
yeah.
put up a stand in 15 minutes, and for them it was a weekend event.
There's I found stands in Pennsylvania like 2 miles deep in this stuff. There was like a
Oh my
full
gosh.
box blind built in the tree. I'm like, who the hell carries boards 2 miles in to build this tree
Dedication.
stand? You know what I
That's
mean?
some dedication, man. Yeah, equipment has definitely made it easier, but here you are going back to trad bows. So,
Yep. Yep.
yeah, that's funny.
I think honestly, my biggest thing is my whole life, I just like to do stuff that other people don't want to do or won't
but-
do, you know?
yeah, and so
Like I feel like that's where I get my gratification at, or, you know, that's what I kind of live for, is just doing stuff that other people won't do.
yeah, I think there's a lot to that for sure. And I know you're a power lifter too. So I mean, there's not a lot of people walking around on the street that want to power lift. 'Cause who wants to move
Yeah.
really, really heavy weights? Like,
Everybody wants to do it until they do it.
yeah, yeah. So talk a little bit about your powerlifting and how maybe that transfers to the whitetail woods.
Yeah. So I haven't powerlifted in about a year now. I'm kind of like on the back stretch of that, kind of leaving that behind me a little bit. I did it for about 8 years. Um, it definitely had put my foot in the door in that sport. Did very well for myself in that sport. I had the all-time world record deadlift for a little while in my weight class. Um,
Really?
yeah, yeah. So it would have been like the heaviest deadlift ever pulled in the 308-pound weight class, and I think that record stood for about 13 years. I think before I broke it. So that was 942 pounds, and then in the
Jesus.
gym, my best was 971. And then as far as competing full power, I benched 505 and squatted 850. And then my best total was 2230. And I was I think, top 15 in the world in my weight class at that point.
Wow. So
But anymore, I like to wake up not sore. So I'm leaving out on the back burner for now. Chapters go on a different page.
yeah, I mean that's a lot, dude. That is a lot, and I think that shows the level of dedication, obviously, for you to be at one of the best in anything. Period, no matter
Hmm.
what it is. It takes so much
Absolutely. Yeah.
dedication and focus, and I think that's obviously a personality trait of yours because you would not have gotten to that point otherwise.
Discipline, lots of discipline.
Yeah,
Yep.
and so
And that goes a long ways for anything. You know, the discipline in life, in sports, anything, you know, it gets you, I think that really gets you far in life, is just knowing discipline.
yeah. So how did you what originally got you interested in powerlifting? Were you like was it sports
Almost,
and you
yeah.
transitioned into more competitive weightlifting?
Yeah. So as far as like sports, when I was in school, you know, I played baseball, like when I was real little league baseball, and then did some track through javelin, shot put stuff. And then football, I played football through high school. And, really, like, I would just fool around. Like my senior year in high school, I'd fool around in the weight room. It seems so random, but me and a couple of buddies after school just walked up into the weight room. There's this the squat rack and this barbell, and we just started throwing on weights. And it technically we call it a rack pull. It was just like at your knees, and we were just lifting it to see how much all of us could lift, just to goof off.
Hmm.
Yeah, I don't know. I think I pulled like 5 or 6 plates or something. Just I'm like, man, like I'd be a little stronger than I thought I was. And then I had a couple of buddies that kind of like seen, I guess, potential, and I had some guys reach out to me about actually getting together and doing a training session. And I got with them, and they kind of hyped me up about it. And I started training, and I just met a lot of the right people. I met a lot of unbelievably awesome people in the powerlifting sport. I had a lot of support in that sport, and I think that really made it a home run for me. And it was just one of those things that you live for, you know, just like guys with whitetail hunting.
Hmm.
At one point, you know, I lived and breathed that sport, and it's the only thing that mattered to me. Period. And
Hmm.
I, you know, that's what it takes to be one of the best in anything. You have to live for it and wake up and breathe it, and just it's an everyday part of your life.
Yeah, for sure, absolutely. And I think there are a lot of parallels with whitetails, and I think you mentioned of having really good people in your corner to help you. And I'll be curious to ask you who has been in your corner for whitetails as you've dove more into this, because I'm sure you've had a good mentor or someone that you can bounce ideas off of that's been impactful for you.
Hmm. So, I mean, there's a handful of guys that, you know, I shoot. ideas back and forth with. I mean, obviously, I was at the show with Ryan Glitsky. I talked to him, bounced stuff off of him, and this year I've been talking to Nathan Killen. He's a super nice guy.
Yeah.
Always has awesome advice and opinions. Then a couple of my buddies from back home here. I got a couple of buddies that I've known for a while that are low key, really good whitetail hunters.
Yep.
You know what I mean? So
yeah. And do you think that has had a direct impact on your whitetail success of having those people in your corner?
yes. So it's just like I've heard a bunch of other people say, I'm a student of the game. I don't think at any point, it doesn't matter how much information I already know or have my own style, I will always want to learn. If there's somebody else, even like compound, trap bow, no matter what, if there's somebody else killing really big deer on public and they're just getting it done, what are you doing? I want to know, what I mean? Is there anything in your regimen, big or small, that I can use in mine that could take my success from 75% to like 90%?
Yeah.
I mean, anything to raise the bar, anything to help make that small adjustment.
What are some small adjustments you've made over the last couple of years that you think have made a big impact?
There a lot happened this year, I feel, and I don't even know that I could write it down on a piece of paper how many things I changed from year to year. I think post-season scouting, like I have done post-season scouting, but this year was the biggest year for it. And I've really taught myself to slow down. Like I used to speed scout. And when I'm talking speed scout, like I would walk through an area, fairly good pace one time. And then that would really be it. Like, oh, well, that area's kind of trash, it's whatever. But then you spend another day or two in that spot and take your time. You're like, there's some stuff here that I should have been looking at closer. So slowing down has been a big one for me. Just really understanding what's going on and how the deer are using it.
Yeah. So when you're slowing down, you just mentioned seeing how the deer are using it. Is that the biggest aspect of that, of like trying to find some subtle things that you would simply overlook if you went fast, because obviously you went through it fast and you didn't see a lot of these things until you slowed down. So when you say slow, help illustrate that for people to understand. Are you like walk 50 yards, stop, look around? And obviously this depends on the area, but it like, if you could explain how slow is to you.
Okay. So the area that I've been scouting for this buck here on my table, I've been in that spot this year probably 7 or 8 times, and they're all at the minimum, at least 3 to 4 hours at a time. And I'm on my ONX, I'm going slow, I'm looking for any little subtle terrain features, and I'm just walking through and checking them out. It doesn't matter how big or small the rub is. I'm looking at it. What direction is it going? What there are characteristics to the rub, because I know this buck has some junk on his bases and on his twos. So I'm looking like, is this a rub that I think that buck made? And all that small stuff. It's literally just like a puzzle. Well, I've heard someone say it's like, putting the puzzle together. It's literally a puzzle.
Yeah, Johnny Stewart's like his thing is like being a detective and like all this different stuff and like picking up clues. And that you're exactly right.
Absolutely. And like my biggest thing is, I might walk past some stuff. Obviously, you can't scout like a 5,000 acre piece. So obviously, you're going to start on your maps, and you're going to be like, I'll get on there, I'll make the area shape on my own X, and I'll be like, this square right here. I'm like, all right, that's 60 acres. Well, I'm going to head right for that 60 acres first. Then once I get into that 60 acres, whatever it is, then inside that 60 acres, I'm looking for the little subtle terrain features. And I'll be like, I need to make my way, to point A, B, C, D, E, and F. And I'll just real slow. So I'm going to check out all of those. It might take me all day, but I'm going to check all those out. And then I'm making marks, my scrapes, rubs, trails, big tracks, creek crossings, anything. I'll make note of all that stuff. And then once you get to the end of it, then you can say, well, I seen this track over here at point A, and at point D, I seen a track about the same size come from the same direction. And it's just putting all those little things together and trying to really understand know exactly what's happening, why that deer's doing what he's doing, where's he going, where's he bedding, where's the food. Look for the pinch points in between where he's feeding, where he's bedded, when he's bedding, what can he see, what can he smell? Does the hills and the terrain make the wind swirl? What's the thermals doing? I mean, it's a crazy game to play, but
It's a
once
long
you actually
checklist. Yeah.
understand, once you understand all that stuff, man, you can really, really put a hurting on these deer as far as getting on their key senses. They might not kill one every year like that, but I tell you what, you're going to be on your A game and you're going to be right on top of them if you can get
Yeah.
all that stuff together.
Absolutely. I think you make a really good point. I think if I had to generalize and guess, people go too fast for probably just about everything. I think sometimes
Absolutely.
they hang their sets too fast. They walk too fast when they're trying to get in. They walk too fast when they're trying to get out. And I don't
Yep.
know. I don't know if it's just because people feel like they have to be in a hurry. And I'm guilty of this too. I'm very guilty of it. But
Oh, absolutely. I can be too. But like one of my weaknesses is not making the right decision in the heat of the moment. And I know that's such a hard thing to do. But I really got to focus on like slowing time down in the heat of the moment. Two examples of this last year, I messed up in Ohio. I'm sitting on this north face. There's two logging roads below me, but I'm kind of in a saddle a little bit. It's not really. It's just it's a tiny saddle. But I know the deer like to cross there a lot. And there's a doe group staying right there. And I was hunting that. And November 10th in the morning, I had a really good buck come through and chase a doe right past a tree. That's the one I couldn't get swung around on in my saddle. And they come right down that first logging road. I'm thinking to myself, man, I should probably get down out of my tree and move down to that logging road and get set up in case another one comes by. Then I'm like, wow, maybe I should just stay put because he only ran 20 yards from the tree.
yep.
Well, not even 2 hours later, a bigger buck comes right down that logging road, and he doesn't come up the hill. He just keeps going. He's chasing, and I'm like, oh my god.
Yeah.
And then the next day, I kind of did the same thing. I went to a different spot, and I'm sneaking up over the south side, headed to the north side of this ridge. And as I get to the top, I went up like mid morning just because how the thermals and stuff worked. I wanted to get up as the thermals were rising. I peek over and I catch these does. There's like 4 or 5 does mingling around like 40 yards, but there's a log road and a really nice pinch above a ditch below them. And my plan was to head for that ditch. But in my head, I'm like, man, if I just let these does feed off and I set up right where those does are, I'd probably be in a pretty good spot. Buck's probably going to come through there and check out right where those does were messing around at. So I let them feed off. I go down and set up right where the does were. And I don't know, it was 11 o'clock in the morning. I look down and here comes just a bruiser.
Oh man.
And he's right top of that ditch, right on that logging road, right where I was headed to.
Yeah.
And heat of the moment, I'm thinking, I'm going to shoot that buck as he's coming through. He's like 45 yards or so, which is about as far as I would ever shoot. But he's a big deer. I pictures this deer. He was probably like a 140s 10 point, but his body was just unreal. I mean, he was 100% a 5-year-old deer. Just a real dark, like almost black looking coat.
Love it.
And so I'm trying to make a decision on this deer, and I try to get him to stop. So I grunt at him. He stops and looks. He's behind a tree. Takes a couple more steps. Grunt again. Well, by the time you do that, he knows the gig's up. Like he's like, something's not right here.
Yep.
So he dips down over the ditch and leaves. And I'm thinking, man, I just completely blew that. But then a lot of times you don't think about this stuff until later. I thought to myself, I'm like, man, if I had just never said a word, I bet you that buck was on those tracks already. And he probably would have circled right up to this tree stand if I would have just not even said a word.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's always like 5 minutes after you're like, shit.
It's hard to process because your heart rate's getting elevated. Okay, you see a target buck or a buck you really want to shoot. It's in human nature to get, for most people, to get a skewed decision process. I mean, because you want it to happen so bad. You're like, what can I do? What can I do? And then to your point, doing nothing would have been better in that situation.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And that's a really good point too, that you realize that he was probably on those trail and that he would have looped around, which I bet you won't make that decision or that mistake again twice. Like it's part of the process in the game.
Yep.
Yeah. That's interesting.
You
So
definitely learn the most from your mistakes. So
absolutely, it sucks, but yeah, I wish it wasn't that way, but yeah, 100%. And so there's so many people too that have stories where they're like, I think I need to move, and the guys that do move sometimes do connect, and sometimes like usually, or it's like I wish I would have, and it's your side of the story too. So I think that's probably a key lesson right here, that if you have an
yep,
inclination to move, do it because you're
yep.
probably right.
I see that all the time too. I had a buddy who did the same thing in PA. He made this like crazy 3 hour sneak into this spot, circled around these bedded deer, sat up, had a hot doe come through with a small buck, didn't move. The shooter he was after down the same trail. He's like, shit, should have moved.
Yep.
Yep.
Story, yeah. Or the other, does this happen to you where you get set up and you're in your tree, or maybe you're 3 sticks high, maybe two sticks high, getting ready to set your third one. You're like, this is the wrong tree. I need to be the next tree over. Do
Yep.
you do that, or has that happened to you? I've had that happen to me a handful of times. And
Oh yeah, it's definitely happened for sure. I'm trying to get away from that kind of stuff in my regimen. I'm trying to have everything that I'm going to do, every spot that I'm going to hunt, I'm trying to have calculated and trees picked. Is
That's
what I'm trying to do this
huge.
year.
Yep, that's huge. Because that's an excellent point, because a lot of these really successful, I would say, guys that are a little bit more mobile, people I think lose in translation that they're just going in and kind of picking a tree. And that is the
Yep.
case, but they've already, to your point, methodically walked through that area and can picture the trees in their mind of like, this is the tree. Or maybe you mark it actually on Onyx and take a picture of it. And then you're like, okay, that is the tree. Or, so I think that's a really good point of, okay, you're already pre-picking the trees, but you're only going to go in when the conditions are right, based off all the scouting and camera data that you
Yep.
have already.
Something that I heard of some guys doing too this season that I'm going to start doing actually this weekend when I go into scout is taking a stick or maybe even 2 sticks with you, get up that tree that you plan on to hunt. As long as it's just a regular day with your predominant wind that's the same all the time, usually westerly, it's westerly here, and throw milkweed from the tree
Yeah.
and making sure that it's going to do what you want it to do come that time.
Yeah, that is such a dynamic thing in the world of whitetails. Like we just talked about it on our 8-year anniversary podcast about how important milkweed is for figuring stuff out. I think that is, people are doing it a lot more, but I still think that's one of the most underrated tools that someone can have. Just to your point, understand all those different things. And do you find often that sometimes it's not doing what it's supposed to, or what you think?
Yeah, a lot of times it'll fool you, especially if you're in any kind of ditch system or major terrain system.
Yep. Yeah, it does funky stuff. But if you can figure out how to use that to your advantage, though, I mean, that's such a huge thing to have, and it gives you a lot more confidence with how you're set up. Yeah,
Yep.
that's definitely one of the biggest things. Is there anything else that you're doing throughout the off season now? It's May. What else is on your checklist right now? So you're still scouting, things are greening up, but you're still out there scouting. What exactly are you looking for in May as signs a little bit harder to find?
I don't know if the sign's really different that I'm looking for. I'm still looking, for the feed trees, where the food's at, where the scrapes. Scrapes are the biggest thing. I mean, I know you're a big scrape guy. I love scrapes just the same.
Mm-hmm.
But I try to find those scrapes. What's connecting the scrapes? Is it where's the food at? Where's the bedding, suspected bedding at from there? And I really tried to get into the bed game for like 2 years, and I know it's such like a big topic now, but I just have not mastered that or like found a way to get super super close without getting caught. So I'm kind of like stepping back away from that, and I know areas where bucks bed, and even though they don't sit in the same bed every single day, I think in these big blocks of timber with clear cuts, they bounce around in maybe like a 100-yard circle or something. But basically, especially with the trad though, my setup's changed a little bit because now I got to find little pinches, little features in between that scrape and that bed, or in between that scrape and the food source, through first food source. And I'm looking for pinches where, my shots can only be 20 yards.
Mm-hmm.
I might not see as many deer that way, but I'm pretty sure the spots I have set up now, where I'm at is where I need to be. And I just need to put a couple of days in that tree. And the deer that I do see come through that pinch is going to be the deer that I need to be.
Mm-hmm. I always
So
like,
yeah, scrapes, feed trees. It's always good to find more bedding, but anymore, I'm pretty good at just picking that out. You find a flat clear cut that has a little point or finger jutting off of it. Depends on what way that point's facing. A lot of times it's just on that point. If it's a southern point, a lot of times it's doe bedding, and then the north sides are usually the buck bedding, and then the east sides are buck bedding.
mm-hmm. Yeah. What, if you had to pick, obviously you're hunting a lot when you're mentioning, 20 some sits in Ohio and then obviously however many in Pennsylvania, but if you had to pick your favorite time of the year to be in the woods, give us a date range and what that setup looks like.
Man, I don't know. I am starting to like early season more and more every year, just because of being able to pattern them a lot better. My favorite, I think, if I had to put a couple of days, if I could only hunt a couple of days, maybe it would probably be the last 2 to 3 days of October into the first 2 to 3 days in November.
Yeah.
That's just what I feel like. Man, it could happen anytime. You just don't know.
Yeah.
Rather than early season, you kind of have your expectations set to, I'm probably not hunting mornings, and I'm probably just sitting in the evenings from bedding to food. You know what I mean? That's just kind of what early season is for me, anyhow.
Yeah. I think that's a super exciting time of year.
Mm-hmm.
It's like peak excitement and you're still super fresh and you're just
Yep.
like, oh yeah, it's nothing but anticipation.
And as far as the setup goes, probably something to do with the scrape. Probably a certain kind of scrape. The last 2 years, I've also had this happen to me. I'll have a big old mature buck come through. Just an example, 2 seasons ago, I had a buck show up at like 4 o'clock in the morning on this scrape. And in my head, I'm thinking like, yeah, he's probably just cruising through, but he's never been there. That camera been there all summer on that scrape all fall.
Really?
And it's like the 29th of October, this buck shows up at like 3 in the morning.
Yep.
And I'm like, that's probably not a big deal. I'll just hunt somewhere else because that deer's not coming back through there. The next day, daylight coming back through. And I'm like, man. And then I seen it a second time this year that I almost made it happen.
Mm-hmm.
I was just set up too far off. That's actually a buck my dad killed in gun season later that year. But October 31st, buck shows up on a scrape at midnight.
Mm-hmm.
The next morning, bam, daylight, 7:30. It's almost like the summer bucks, the bucks that summer there, and then they go fall somewhere else, and then they just like transition back through that like 1 or 2 days.
Yep.
And then usually when they come back through the second time, it's daylight, is what I've seen.
That's really interesting. I think that's a good point because a lot of people, I think, when they see that picture of a buck on a scrape in the middle of the night or when it's dark, they probably, I think a lot of people discount it too heavily in reality.
Yep.
And there's a full spectrum to this, but I mean, right there, those are good examples. And then I've seen that as well here where I'm at. And it's like, if he's there, he's probably going to be there in daylight at some point. But to your point, the window is going to be small, but at least trying. It's worth trying for sure. And especially based off of what you're saying too.
And I did hunt that. I just didn't hunt on the scrape. I hunted on the same logging road, but maybe 100 yards, 150 yards up the trail. And I was sitting in a tree and ding, cell cam goes off.
He was on.
I'm like, man, here he comes.
Uh-huh.
And then he must have veered off at some point. He never finished coming through. But and that's such a hard thing too. And I know that's a big controversy right now between SD cards and cell cameras. But it's hard to get that information if you don't have a cell camera in that particular situation anyhow. What are the chances of you walking up to the camera, pulling your card, like, oh, that bug was at midnight last night, I need to get back in there? Like, it's a very small window.
Yeah. it would be a less than 10% chance that really happens. But
Yep.
with the cell camera, it's probably closer to it's definitely an
Yeah.
increased percentage. Absolutely.
Yep.
Well, let me ask you this though. So when you set up 100 yards away from that scrape, why did you decide to set up there versus actually on the scrape?
Because of just where the scrape was located, I didn't think I could get to it
Sure.
before daylight without busting everything out.
Yep. Yeah, that's always
Now, I mean, I don't really know where the buck went to
sure.
from that point or where he was coming from. There's a green field down below, and I was just afraid that if I got anywhere close to that green field, that
You'd be
that
feeding
I
there in
would
the
just
morning.
bust everything out and it would be over with to begin with. So
Yeah.
I'd make a big circle and come in from the top down over. Just what I chose to do, and it was the wrong choice. So
Yeah, well, I mean, it's easy to say now, but I wonder if you would have tried to set up on that if you would have got busted and he wouldn't have showed up at all.
yeah,
And you think,
I mean, I was in a great pinch. I was on that logging road in a nice pinch. If he'd have come through, would have had to have came through right there. But somewhere between that point, he veered off. So
yeah. What's something that you think, and you can base this off of people you talk with or however you want to base it. What do you think something that people are have a misconception of or doing wrong in your opinion? And maybe this is even something that you've changed your thought process on.
I feel like everybody has their niche, but if you're talking about just general hunting, like the general hunting population, I don't think anybody really does pay attention to thermals. Um, I mean, I know it's a really commonly used term in the hunting industry,
Yep.
but I really haven't ran into any other like really like high end serious killers in the woods in my areas. So that's the kind of stuff I see all the time is other stand setups, and it's like these guys might play the wind a little bit.
Hmm.
That's a lot of gun hunters here, and even the bow hunters that I do see their stands. It's kind of like I don't know why you set there. It's not really, and I'm not calling them like any
Sure.
names or nothing. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? But
yeah,
it's
yeah.
just like it doesn't make sense to me.
Hmm.
And they might kill deer. They
Sure.
might kill a nice 2-year-old or something there. But yeah, I just think that I don't know, maybe I'm looking for a different type of deer
Sure.
in the areas that I'm at compared to other people. So probably thermals. Now I think thermals save a lot of deer because I mean it's even the high end guys have a hard time cracking that code.
Hmm.
So it's like the chances of just a regular guy going out and setting up and getting lucky enough that a 5-year-old buck strolls through and doesn't catch a whiff. I mean,
Yeah.
very low
Yeah.
percentage.
There's always an element of luck. There's always an element of
Oh
that.
yeah, I have seen it time and time again where it's like I have no idea how this person killed this deer,
Yeah.
but it had to have been 99.5% luck.
Sure. Well, I think this is always for the guy that usually, let's say over a 10-year period, let's say 8 of those years he tags a respectable deer. Like that guy has some stuff figured out. I'm not saying he's the best hunter on earth, but he has some things figured out.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have some hunters that maybe kill a deer every 7 years or every 8 years, and it's it's like you spend enough times in the woods, you're going to have some lucky breaks, and I think that's important. I think that keeps people engaged and keeps people engaged. It's like if there was never an element of luck, then I don't know how many people would really deer hunt.
Yeah, and I really feel like that opinion that I gave is I don't know how to explain it. I feel like when I'm on here doing this with you and we're talking about that subject, I'm thinking about all the things that like high end hunters do think about, and not maybe what the general public thinks
Sure.
about.
Yeah.
So I'm sure there's other things that like general public looks at compared to us, but just as far as me looking in, like if I was general public, I would want to know more about how the thermals work and terrain features and all that stuff.
Hmm.
I really feel like probably my niche in hunting that we didn't even talk about is terrain. Like I find that that's the best. What I am best at is reading terrain. I am constantly having my face in a map all the time,
Hmm.
and I just really find myself if I lay a pin on an X, probably 8 times out of 10, it's probably really close to what I thought it was going to be,
Hmm.
or maybe the buck's bedded like really close to where I thought he was going to be at. So I feel like that's kind of my niche with hunting is reading the maps and reading terrain.
Well, that's something you can get better at too. because you're pre-qualifying
Yep.
it and then you go look at it and then you can compare that directly. And so I think
Yep.
that's something you just continue to get better with versus someone that just looks at it and then they're like, I think that'll be good. Maybe they never look at it. And to your point, like you just get more refined with that process by going and doing.
Yep. It's just like anything else, man. Training in the gym or shooting the trad bow, topo maps. It just takes time. You
Yeah.
just do it and consistency, and you just do it all the time until you just know you're good.
Yeah, for sure. Anything else here that you would want to share that we haven't covered here yet?
Um,
Covered a lot of
I
really
mean, we could,
good items, but go ahead.
yeah. I mean, I'm sure we could sit here and talk for another hour or two if you wanted to.
For sure.
Yeah. Yeah. So I have like a couple goals written down here that
Yeah, let's
I
cover
really
'em.
like thought. I
Yeah.
really thought about,
Yeah.
and patience. Patience. I feel like I have patience, but I feel like there's different levels of patience. Like just like going back to that deer that I was trying to stop and kind of
Mhm.
messed it up because I didn't wait long enough. Like I said, I really slowing down the moment is something I really want to work on. And this is one I heard the other day, um, about people being afraid to even post stuff on social media anymore because everybody's so opinionated.
Sure.
I think everybody's guilty of this. Every once in a while, man, it's just like there's some stuff that I won't post just because of the media backlash. And really, like, I think that takes away from the experience, and you just have to stop caring what other people think and literally enjoy the entire process for yourself. And I'm pretty sure I heard Chad talk about this too on a podcast about nobody's going to remember.
Right.
No one's going to remember your buck 2 years from now. Or like the only time that no one actually really cares.
Yep.
If you kill a big one, they're like, "Oh man, that's awesome, congrats to you." But then if you shoot a dink and it makes you happy, that's awesome. But then you get like negative feedback. But in the end, like nobody really cares or is going to remember.
Hmm.
So you really just have to like take a step back and enjoy everything and do it for you and not for everybody else.
Absolutely. Yeah. I couldn't agree more with that. And I think I personally see this trend even on the other end of the spectrum too, where people kill really solid deer and they don't post them anymore. And it's like, I really think that over time we're going to see less and less deer posted on social media across the whole entire spectrum for whatever
Yep.
reason. And I know I was just talking about this yesterday, but like the 2016 to 19, I feel like almost every deer on the face of the earth got posted on the internet.
Yep.
And I just don't think that happens now on the really big deer and also whatever, just a holistic number of deer getting shot. So I think
Yep.
that whole phase or period is continuing to evolve. But I think you hit the nail on the head. Hunt for yourself and whatever your goals are, you know what those are, and hold yourself accountable, which I think is
Absolutely. And
something.
you're only as good of a hunter as the ground that you have to hunt. So if you want to shoot a 150-inch deer, but your ground doesn't have a
You
150-inch
got to
deer
go
on
there.
it, you might have to settle for the 125
Yeah,
and be happy with it. You know what I mean?
there's only whatever that ceiling is. You have to have enough self-awareness to know what that is, and if you're not happy with that,
Yep.
then you got to go somewhere else, I think. And
It's just like here in PA. I shot one real big one that was like an exceptional deer that I might not ever shoot another one that size again here in PA. But I know that this deer that I found the shed off of, he's going to be knocking on that 150-inch mark this year, and
Mhm.
that is like you talk about the top 1% in this area. That's like the top 0.5%
Yeah,
deer in
yeah.
this area. But I'm going to hunt him. But if the card game doesn't play out the way I want it to, and a 125-inch buck walks by the recurve, probably go smoke him.
Heck
You
yeah,
know?
man.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well,
Every once in a while, you got to be an opportunist. So
yeah, you got to work with what's in front of you. Well, no, I really appreciate your time, and I look forward to following along your season and seeing how. I hope you shoot that slammer with the trad bow. I think that'd be so darn cool. That'd be a
we'll
heck of a
find
feat.
out.
Yeah, but where can people find you if they want to get connected or follow along with what you have going on?
Yeah, so mostly everything I do is on Instagram. It's just Unleash the Weist on Instagram, and I post stories on there. Basically, every time I'm in the timber, I post. So, and then I try to mix some posts too, just to keep that ball rolling.
Awesome, man. Well, I really appreciate your time. Good luck this season, and like I said, look forward to following along.